So you're all very welcome to Practice News. This 8th of October 2021. Practice News is news for members in practice. Now, what are our headlines today? Look, every time that we have a conversation with any practitioner, recruitment always comes up as being one of the issues. When we ask them what are the issues which impact you and where you find challenges, finding and retaining the right staff is always a challenge for people. So look, we're going to cover that today. I'm delighted to have Karen Lanigan and Dave Reardon on to talk to us about what can you do to make a difference. Okay, moving on, the CRO and other regulators, we're going to be talking to Dee Moran. The 25th of November deadline for companies is approaching, and even sooner, the RBO for trust deadline of the 23rd of October is approaching. So what does that mean for you? Obviously, there's been some issues with the CRO, with the website this week, so we're going to talk about that. If I'm to mention the other issue that constantly comes up in discussions with practitioners, IT, tech, and the challenges and the opportunities that are there. So it's obviously a hot topic. It's on people's minds, and Jeremy is going to be dealing with that. Going to be talking about 2 free events that are coming up, and what they mean for you, one of them particularly for practitioners, and just what we've learned so far. Tax, obviously the big news story this week for Ireland Inc. is the 15% tax rate for the larger multinationals, but that obviously is not going to impact on the vast majority of companies. What is going to impact on the vast majority of people is the income tax deadline, which is also fast approaching. So Nora Collender is coming on to give us a talk give us an update of where we're at with the tax. There's a lot happening also with audit and financial reporting. You may have missed something. Jeremy is going to give you a quick roundup of what's out there, what you need to be looking at now. There you go, looking over at anti-money laundering. The UK, obviously with Brexit, has issued its own list of high-risk countries. The impact of a high-risk country, you must treat that person as being a high-risk individual from an anti-money laundering point of view if they're from a high-risk country. And there have been additions to the list, which we're going to run through with you. Looking slightly into the future, perhaps looking right at the present. Sustainability is going to impact on a few of our of the issues that we talk about today. It's the one that you cannot ignore at the moment: sustainability. Now, so that is what we're going to talk about. Who is going to talk to you? We've got Nora Collender. Obviously, Nora, every time. Delighted to have Nora back again, the Institute's tax lead, to talk to us about all this new in tax. We have Karen Lanigan, the head of member experience, the head of making sure that we are welcoming you as we should when you approach the Institute. She and Dave Reardon, our Institute recruitment specialists, are going to talk to you about getting and retaining staff. But myself and Jeremy, of course, as always, and we also are delighted to have Dee Moran, the Institute's professional accounting lead, to talk to us about all things professional accounting and CRO and regulator related. And then we also have some external guests we're delighted to have as well. So, Jeremy, you're going to be talking.
I'm delighted to be joined by Kieran Phelan and Maeve Stewart to talk about technology at about 10:30 or so. Just give you a bit of background. Kieran is a fellow of the Institute, and Kieran has been in practice on his own since about 2010, so 11 years now. He has his own firm, Cloud 360 Accounting, based in Derry. Now, it's fair to say Kieran has always been a technology pioneer for accountants. He would have been the first Xero certified accountant in Northern Ireland, or could even be actually the whole island of Ireland, back in 2010. And just actually earlier this year in March, his practice was actually winner of the best actually small practice in the Xero Awards in London. So very well done to Kieran. Now, I'm delighted also to be joined by Maeve. Maeve is also actually a fellow of the Institute, and Maeve works in Beyond Accounting. I'm sure many of you know the firm just in Dublin here. Now, Maeve has over her years worked in both industry and in practice, and I actually work quite closely with Maeve on our technology committee, and myself and Maeve are going to talk a little bit more about upcoming events on that. Maeve is the chair of the technology committee for the last 5 or 6 years, so I'm sure you're all familiar with the annual technology conference, which we have every January, and Maeve would have a big part in preparing for all that. And Maeve actually has been involved in the technology committee itself for 10 or 12 years, so very grateful for that. Listen, that's Kieran and Maeve. I'm going to hand back to you, Cornel, and we'll be talking with them later.
Absolutely, looking forward to that. Now, this is who you are this morning. Generally speaking, you are FCAs, 10 years qualified. Vast majority are in practice or employed in practice. Got a good distribution from the Republic and Northern Ireland. That's the age distribution. And as you can see, from all over the island of Ireland, north and south, east and west, we're delighted to have you all on board, and even a couple, as I say, from overseas. Now, our disclaimer, as always, anything we mention here is a summary. Please go back to the source document if you actually want to advise somebody to take action or not to take action. Really, everything we're doing here is, it comes with that proviso. So I'll just ask people to watch out for that. So now, Jeremy, back to you to talk about what the practice updates are.
Thanks very much, Conal. And for the next 10 minutes or so, both Conal and I are just going to give you a quick update on some of the technical issues, audit, financial reporting, AML, and sustainability as well, that have had key changes over the last couple of months. Now, when we have a matching in Practice Matters, which was actually just issued last week, actually on Thursday, the 30th, we usually take these issues from Practice Matters. Now, everybody in practice should have received an email last Thursday, the 30th, with their actual latest edition of the October Practice Matters. If you haven't, as I say to you, you can actually download it here and the past editions as well at the link. It's invaluable. I'm sure everybody is familiar here on the webinar today with Practice Matters, an invaluable source of all the key updates of what's happened technically over the last month or two. So, Conal, if you can click ahead. And my first thing I'm going to talk about, and I've quite a little bit here today on audit related updates. And Conal, if you can click to my next slide. And as you all are aware, of course, there's been quite an amount of change, both UK and particularly Ireland as well, with relation to the ethical standard for auditing by IASA, but also the actual ISAs themselves. And just to give you a bit of background, yes, in November 2020, IASA would have issued revised standards in both areas. It's something I would have covered in a little bit of detail going back probably last spring. And also, of course, in our auditing webinars, we go into a lot more details on these. Now, always the Institute, of course, would try to put out guidance for our member auditors to assist on this. We have to thank Dee and the Advocacy and Voice team, professional accountancy team for this, and of course the input of lots of members in our different committees as well. I just want to talk to you this morning about actually 3 pieces of guidance, but the first one really relates to the actual revised ethical standard itself, and it's technically release 0221. You can download it at the link there. And why this is so important is with the new ethical standard, you actually have to report breaches of the ethical standard from July 21, from the actual effective date. If there is a breach, you have to report it on an annual basis to the actual institute itself as your recognized accountancy body. But if it also concerns a PI, you have to actually report it to IASA. Now, this technical release actually has a very good example report that you would send to your recognized accountancy body, to the institute. Now, if you haven't had a breach in any 1 year of the ethical standard, you don't have to send in nil reports. That's the actual good news. Now, if you do have such a breach of the ethical standard, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with it, you would also have to report that to the actual people in charge of the client in question in a timely manner. And there's a little bit more detail as well there with relation to what exactly has to be done in that with relation to your communications with those charged with governance, ISA Ireland 260. Now, as well then, there's actually the guidance itself, TA 0221 on revised ethical standard for auditors, so that the general guidance outside reporting on the ethical standard and what has changed. And the ethical standard itself, it really has been simplifying the standard, making it easier to understand. Suppose some of the changes are there has been more, and it's same in the UK standard as well, which we discussed in previous shows, where there has been more prohibitive services such as internal audits and so on. This document here, TA 0221, goes a whole table matching together the changes going from your initial planning, your planning ISAs in the 200s right down to reporting in the 700s. So very, very useful to have, and it shows what applies to PIs and to ordinary company audits. So definitely do check it out. And as I said, this ethical standard, it's effective from 15 July 21, and it goes into some details there as well on any changeover or transition provisions. Conal, that's as much as I'm going to say there on that. If you can click ahead to the next one. And the third actual technical guidance document is TA 0321, issued again actually in September. And this covers the changes to the actual ISAs themselves for the Republic of Ireland. Again, these actual changes, as I say to you, they're effective for the audit of financial statements for periods beginning on or after 15 July 21. So you strictly speaking don't have to have them in place at the moment, but early adoption is permitted. Now, I suppose the main changes here, there's some changes such as enhanced disclosure on materiality, audit reporting, as I say, on fraud as well for PIs. Naturally, I'm not going to get into big detail on this morning. We will cover it in more detail, for instance, in our auditing actual webinar that's coming up actually next Thursday, if anybody wants us to join us. But if you do want a quick overview and you don't want to read through even the detail of the technical guidance documents as well, or even to supplement that, there is actually a very good actual recent article by Daniel O'Donovan and Siobhan Orsley in the June 21 Accountancy Ireland actual issue. So basically do check that out. I think, Conal, that's as much as I'm probably going to say on those technical alerts, but very, very good guidance. And I know it took a lot of time and effort as well from our actual accountancy team and their actual collaborators and members who helped out in that. So thanks very much for that. Conal, if you can click ahead again, this is one I mentioned previously back last April, these IASA CPD guidelines that were actually, first of all, launched back in February of this year. And what the key changes are here for anybody who is actually on the Irish Audit Register. This is very, very important to know that there will be changes from January 22 with relation to how the Institute monitors the actual enforcement, the compliance by RIs with relation to the CPD, audit-related CPD they undertake to ensure that they're keeping up to the standards of auditing that's needed. Now, I know as well as Practice Matters and Practice News last April, the professional standards team would have written out to all audit compliance principals, telling them about these changes. And particularly if you're based in Northern Ireland or if you have very little audit clients, this is something for you to, I suppose, particularly take notice of if you're still on the Irish Audit Register. Conal, if you can click ahead again. Some of the key changes here will be that there will be, I suppose, more prescriptive detail of what's needed. So first of all, there will be an annual CPD declaration needed for responsible individuals. There will be mandatory detailed CPD records to be maintained, and the Institute will have to inspect these every 6 years. So maybe not too different to what they do in the actual normal audit monitoring visits, but still more detail required. Now, to summarize just the key requirements here, the key to this here is that you need to actually make sure that if you're a statutory auditor on the Irish Audit Register, that you're actually keeping up to date on the Irish auditing framework. So the Irish ISAs, the Irish Ethical Standard, Financial Reporting Standards applicable in Ireland, and also Irish company law. And unfortunately, there is no out if you're actually working part-time in the area, if you're actually just have very little clients. So for instance, particularly if you're based in the UK and Ireland, might have very little Irish clients, maybe only one or two, and you're questioning whether you should actually, and the extra work required here and keeping up to date in these standards. There is no actual exception provision in this. You have to keep up to date with your CPD obligations once you're on the register, and that is expected. What we're saying to everyone going forward here is if you're still on the Irish Audit Register, I know the professional standards team gave the option for people to actually Northern Ireland in the UK, if they wish to come off the Irish Audit Register and just remain on the UK register and hence avoid these provisions, that option was there. I think it is still actually there for you to contact professional standards. But if you're still in the Irish Audit Register, you need to actually update and ensure that going forward from January 22, you will be doing requisite training to meet the above requirements in B4 and B5. That's probably pretty as much as I can say about it. The Institute's audit regulations for the Republic of Ireland will also be updated from January 22 as well. So
just if I might just jump in there, Jeremy, for one second. For a lot of these ones, especially the previous publications you're talking about, they're generally speaking, what happens is that IASA is somewhat behind the FRC in issuing these standards, but this CPD standard, they are taking a lead. So there isn't a direct equivalent in the UK, as I understand it, for this. So I guess our ROI auditors need to take heed, or indeed UK auditors who are also Irish auditors. If you're auditing Irish companies, you need to comply with this also.
Indeed.
All right.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Conal. So that's our auditing updates done. But IASA actually as well have been putting out their annual observations paper with relation to financial statements, I suppose topics and issues they wish to highlight for improvement, particularly as we come towards the end of the year and into financial reporting season. Now, this is an annual paper they put out. This is actually just issued about 2 or 3 weeks ago. You can download it at the link here if you haven't seen it. Now, as we all know, IASA, of course, its remit is looking at companies, larger companies' pies, those quoted on the Dublin Stock Exchange primarily. But this paper and the issues it highlights is relevant for all sizes of companies. Now, some of the issues are things that you hear me and Gordon talking about all the time in relation to financial reporting, just the need for more detail, better disclosures, and just really avoiding boilerplates, templates, and notes. But also there's some new things as well, of course, as you can imagine, that have come in as well, and some things we'll be talking about here, such as around climate change. Of course, with the COVID crisis, giving detail on how COVID impacted any company, any supports it got, any actual impact on the trading of the company, just giving as much detail as possible to the use of their financial statements, and if there have been impairments of assets, fair values, and so on as well. Now, guys, the document itself is quite easy to read and to download, but actually Mike Morris Barrett, who is actually a senior manager with IASA, has also kindly actually written a summary article. I think it's about 3 pages long at the October edition of Accountancy Ireland. So please click through and have a read of that as well. Your October edition of Accountancy Ireland, I know it landed actually just in my door here, actually about 2 or 3 days ago. So hopefully it'll be the same for everybody else as well. A very good read, lots of different, as I say, topics covered as ever, but this one is covered in particular. So please check it out. Conal, if you can click ahead again. Now, one for our listeners here today that are based in Northern Ireland and in the UK, as Conal mentioned, with the actual with Brexit, the UK has had to actually update its own AML guidance and its legislation with relation to its own high-risk countries. And this was done actually back in July, the 13th of July. This actual new regulations, quite a short ones, a couple of pages long, basically just listing what it sees as the high-risk countries with relation to money laundering for the UK. And consequently, of course, any of these high-risk countries would actually, you'd need to do enhanced due diligence for any clients you have from them or anything where there's money with relation to any operations that you're auditing or doing work for in this area. So this is something that, if particularly for all accountants based in Northern Ireland and in Britain, you have to actually abide by this list because that's for your jurisdiction. Now, now a lot of the countries on there are the normal ones that you would expect to, unfortunately, are in civil strife, or like Syria, or actually would be prohibited countries like North Korea that you mightn't have clients from. But one notable exception is EU member state is Malta, where you could have clients from. So if you have any Maltese clients in your practice, that's seen as a high-risk country, and you are required to do the extra checks with relation to enhanced due diligence for their AML checks. The full list of the 24 countries can be found at the regulations above. So that's as much as I'm going to say on that. Conal, that's my quick update. I probably haven't taken too much time there. I'm going to hand you back. You're going to tell us a little bit about sustainability, which is our lead article in Accountancy Ireland, in Practice Matters this October.
Absolutely. And I would encourage everybody to read that lead article. I think I suppose that the point is that up until now, accountants have been possibly taking a wait and see approach to how sustainability impacts on their professional practices. We're also looking and monitoring and seeing, well, how does this impact on your practices? And I think, in fairness, when we look back in, say, 5 years' time, we'll say, look, this was a major issue. This was something at this point that you needed to begin to up your involvement in your knowledge, your comfort with the whole area, because this is what your clients are going to be relying upon you to advise them on going forward. If you look at the Irish Times this morning, they're talking about a degree of resistance amongst the public to climate change measures where that impacts people adversely. So fuel taxes and so forth, people are adverse to that. But if we're to meet our climate change as a country, both Ireland and the UK, if we're to meet our climate change obligations, it has to happen. So it is possible, looking forward, to be more regulation, more obligations, and so forth. And accountants are always thinking, I want to be at the leading edge, but not at the bleeding edge. In other words, I want to be there as a leader, but I don't want to spend so much time and effort developing an area that isn't ultimately going to be fundamentally important to my practice. So you're always trying to strike that balance in your practice in what you do. But it seems to us that this is an area now where you need to be turning your attention to. Obviously, there's a number of events that we're organising via CPD in the Institute, which you can tune into, which I'd strongly recommend. Read the article. And just consider the various areas where where clients are going to want you to advise them, where it could be, for example, in order to get grant aid or in order to get finance, that your client companies will need to show their climate credentials. It's also an area, as climate change happens, as a practical reality, and looking forward is something you have to plan for. That there will be more. We're looking at accounting. There will be more provisions required. It's going to impact on the useful lives of assets. It's going to impact on impairments and so forth on assets. So it's something to be thinking about. It's something that IASA certainly, and also the FRC, have called out as an area that they want accountants to be looking at and thinking about. When we're talking to I'm going to be mentioning this also when we're talking to Dina in a few minutes, and we're also going to mention it. We're talking to Karen and Dave as to how this actually impacts your firm in the particular things that you have to sign off on, and whether there's an advantage in being seen as a differentiator here, or is this a differentiator for you in trying to promote your practice to potential staff. Okay, we'll leave it at that because time is pressing, and I will say primarily I would encourage people to read that article. Now we're going to talk to Nora about all matters tax. Nora, how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks, Conal, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to start off by giving you an update of the tax debt warehousing scheme and the interaction with company directors. As you know, if a company director's employer company is in the tax debt warehousing scheme, well, then that director will not have the benefit of the PAYE that's in the debt warehousing scheme for the purposes of his or her income tax calculations this October. So that's going to cause a lot of liabilities for directors that they may not have been aware of. As you know, we wrote to the Minister, we wrote to the Department of Finance looking for a legislative change on this, and that didn't come through. And now we're back to Revenue looking for a practical arrangement on this. So Revenue, I was on to them during the week, and they say that they will have guidance on this to issue in the near future. So we're hoping that there will be a practical arrangement there that you as advisors and accountants can advise the directors that are impacted. Okay, just to also talk about income tax deadline season. As you know, the Chartered Accountants Ireland, under the auspices of the CCABI, wrote to Revenue in September setting out that many firms were still feeling a lot of pressure due to COVID-19 disruption, due to key personnel being sick, due to clients having delays in getting audit information to the accountant due to COVID-19 disruption, and of course, the work that had to be continued in 2021 on the wage supports. So Revenue will not provide an extension, and their first approach on this is to say, file the tax return on the best estimates. Now, I know this is not a good position, and we did state that to Revenue, that this in turn will actually cause more work, and there's a lot of risk involved in putting forward draft information into Revenue in terms of triggering audits and how that washes through. So Revenue will consider the tax practitioner, the accountant, coming to them, setting out the details of why COVID-19 has disrupted their business in 2021 and how they are not in a position to fulfill the deadline requirements. We do have a process now agreed with Revenue on how to go about seeking this arrangement. And I will publish that in Tax News on Monday. I just got it confirmed during the week. So the first thing to do is gather up the list of the clients that are going to be impacted with their PPSN numbers. Set out the case for why the practice is suffering due to the COVID-19 disruption. Submit that via My Inquiries, and select the Collector General drop-down menu and go via General Inquiries. And we've asked Revenue to give this priority and to come back as soon as possible. So Revenue will come back and say yes or no, we will agree to an arrangement. They will be watching out for things on whether the client or the firm has a record of late submission of tax returns. So bear that in mind. We're hoping that that the genuine cases will be properly alleviated by this method. You will know that the Minister for Finance was asked about this in the Dáil recently, and he echoed the same points that Revenue fed back to us, that they will consider cases of severe pressure due to COVID-19 disruption. So that is on record in the Dáil as well. And Minister Donoghue noted Revenue's pragmatic approach to COVID-19 disruption. So we're continuing on the same line as last year. So I'll set that out, and I'd ask you to follow that procedure for making arrangements with Revenue. It's not sufficient just to send a general email to my inquiries and say, look, my firm is going to be in difficulty. Revenue will need a list of the clients that are going to be impacted. And the objective then is, okay, they'll come back and they'll say, yes, you have the arrangement or you don't have the arrangement. And if you do have the arrangement, then a caseworker in Revenue is going to manually lift the surcharge. The surcharge will wash through on some documentation that may be an output from the deadline. So just be aware of that and have a conversation with your client in advance, telling them that you have this arrangement in place so that they are aware that documentation might issue stating they have a surcharge, but you have an arrangement in place with Revenue whereby they lift the surcharge. So it is crucial that you give Revenue the list of the clients impacted and a date on when you feel that you'll be in a position to file tax returns. Okay, just moving on then to the revised audit code of practice. We're working with this with Revenue at the moment. Revenue proposed to issue a revised code of practice in early 2022. The revised code of practice is going to have various levels. So you're going to have level 1, irregularity, level 2, irregularity, and level 3. So level 1 is your innocent error, self-correction, self-review, unprompted disclosure. That's all fairly familiar. Level 2 then will have a new feature in that it will have a risk review. And a risk review is there to replace aspect queries. Aspect queries will be abolished under the new code of practice. As you would know, aspect queries did give the taxpayer the option of making an unprompted qualifying disclosure. So they're going to be no more. They're going to be not like for like, but in certain respects, they're going to be replaced by this risk review, which will be an official notification from Revenue, and therefore you're into prompted qualifying disclosure arrangements with Revenue. And then level 3 is for investigations and egregious irregularities. So just be aware and keep an eye out for that. That will be coming down the track in early 2022, and we are involved in detailed discussions with Revenue with the objective of making this manageable as possible for the taxpayer and for the tax advisor, the accountant. Revenue stated that there was high levels of TWSS compliance on foot of the compliance checks letters that issued over 2020. No surprise there. I know a lot of you are saying that you knew that already, that the taxpayers went into this in good faith, but the compliance checks are reflecting that. There is no compliance intervention planned for EWSS beyond a normal review. That we've asked Revenue a few times at the various tax forums, and that seems to be a consistent message coming back there. Revenue will respond positively to requests from practitioners who are struggling to complete audits during the compliance deadline season. So my advice to you there is, if you do get a notification for an audit, or if you get follow-on letters or correspondence that require work on an audit, then make contact with Revenue. And as I say there, they have stated that they will do what they can to accommodate it in light of the fact that we're into compliance deadline season. Just to also let you know that PUP recipients who went back to work during 2021, they were put on a week 1 basis for the purposes of payroll tax. The objective was to try and collect as much tax arising on the PUP payment in 2021 rather than having them carried over as a liability that's going to be deducted out of their credits from 2022 or 2023 onwards. So Revenue told us that they will be returning recipients who are single individuals or who are couples with a single source of income. They will be returned from the week 1 back to the cumulative basis of taxation for payroll purposes. So you will probably see this washing out now in early October, and if you're running payrolls, you'll be getting updated RPNs to reflect the adjustment of the employees' tax credits. So keep an eye and try and run the payroll as near as possible to catch the most up-to-date RPN issuing. Again, something that's definitely been in the news a lot is the local property tax and the new valuation date, or the valuation date of the 1st of November for updated valuations, the first update in valuations we've had in 8 years. We have written to Revenue seeking clarity. There was a very helpful provision in the 2012 Act, which said that if a taxpayer relied on revenue guidance for the purposes of preparing their self-assessment for LPT purposes, and if the taxpayer got the tax return and the payment in on time and the value of their house was under $1 million, well then the revenue wouldn't seek to challenge that self-assessment. So that provision was removed in the updated Act that came through during the summer. So we've asked Revenue, would they please confirm that they're willing to stand over the spirit of the Section 15 provision that was formerly in the Act, because we feel that there's the same amount of challenge for taxpayers in this season or this time of housing crisis and spiralling house price rises as there was back in 2013 when we had a quite depressed property market. So I'm hoping to have an update on that on e-news, so would you keep an eye on that? I know there's been a lot of talk in the media. Revenue seem to be adhering to that spirit of the original Section 15 through their spokespersons, but I suppose our concern is that this valuation will be the basis for individuals' LPT liabilities for 4 years. And LPT generally is a tax that taxpayers can manage on their own bat, but when things go wrong, then they will be looking for support from their accountants. So we just want to head off those issues at the pass to ensure that it runs as smooth as possibly and minimises the interactions or the need to have your good selves involved in any issues that should arise. And just remember that income tax returns and corporation tax returns will be hit for a surcharge if the LPT return or the LPT liability is outstanding at the time that the corporation tax or income tax return is submitted. So I had some feedback from members last year who got caught out with the deadlines. What they did was they were putting in the income tax return by the extended deadline, and the LPT outstanding liability was paid a day or two later. But it didn't matter that the tax return or the corporation tax return was filed on time. The fact is that the LPT was outstanding at the time the income tax and corporation tax return was submitted, and that resulted in a surcharge. Now, the surcharge is reduced under the new Act that was came about during the summer, and that is going to be capped at 50% of the LPT liability if the LPT liability is made good. But just, I know it's something that does catch out our members quite a lot on the timing of the surcharge. So just before you file the income tax, corporation tax return, make sure that the LPT returns and liabilities are in order. So you will avoid that hassle of having to go off and get the surcharges sorted. So just to give you a quick update on what's happening in the news. As Conan mentioned yesterday, Ireland agreed an arrangement whereby we will sign up to the OECD measures, but we have negotiated that the at least provision is taken out of the provisions for a minimal corporation tax rate. So this means that Ireland can rely on a set 15% effective rate for corporates with turnover of 750 million or more. That leaves the majority of companies in Ireland still availing of the 12.5% rate, which is good news. However, the businesses or the companies that will be impacted by the higher 15% rate, they're 1,500 in number, and they account for 500,000 employees. So it's still not to be underplayed, the importance of the rate hike, but at least Ireland now has clarity and we can depend on 15%. The Institute, under the auspices of the CCABI, made a submission on this to the Department of Finance, and we did make a very stark point that 100,000 jobs are potentially at issue. So yes, yesterday's measures are good news in terms of protecting a good deal of those jobs. But we'll see how it has to wash out. There's a lot of information that has to be dealt with and confirmed via the OECD arrangements yet to be put in place. Just the last one is an update on the budget. I don't have my crystal ball with me, but we are hoping to see measures that will address remote working taxation issues. The rate bands are heavily hinted to be indexed. There seems to be media coverage saying that the micro R&D measures that were introduced in 2019 Act will not now come to pass because they have been blocked at EU level by state aid provisions. But we may see something with the other investment measures to support the SME sector in its place. The Minister has stated that EWSS will remain the same for October. However, he did flag during the summer that there would be a change to EWSS in the last quarter of 2021, which would possibly see employers having to make a contribution. So that might come about, an announcement and clarity on that might be made on budget day. And there may be something to penalise vacant sites and vacant properties. I'm just going on what I'm hearing on the media. So more will be set out on the day, and we'll be issuing a special budget newsletter to all members who are signed up for e-news. So that concludes my roundup. I hope I've covered as many points as possible that are of interest to you today. Thank you very much.
Nora, thank you very, very much. That was a very, very comprehensive update indeed, as ever. And I know there's so much to actually take in there. And actually, Conal, if you can click ahead, I know, Nora, there's actually always a few questions coming actually in from our actual audience here today. And actually also a few compliments, Nora, to all your work as well over recent months and over recent years in liaising with revenue and assistance you provided for individual members. So I'll leave you to actually take a look at those questions. And I'm sure if there's anything you want to address at the end of the show as well, that you'll be with us and that we can talk to the whole audience. So thank you again, Nora. Just one thing before I get on to technology, and this is our next financial year position paper that would have been issued by Nora and the tax team, Advocacy and Voice team, actually just last month. I'm sure many of you have seen this paper already, or you're familiar with last year's paper. And this really here is what is, I suppose, for Republic of Ireland and for Northern Ireland, what we see as realistic actual recommendations to the governments in both jurisdictions in the areas of sustainability, digital transformation and business compliance to help particularly small business and small practice to actually grow their businesses, and as we emerge from this crisis as well, to recover from the crisis. So there's a whole list of recommendations there. I know Dee will probably talk a little bit more about some of them. I know one of them is actually with relation to the actual removal of the actual penalty of loss of audit exemption for late filing in the Republic of Ireland of financial statements with the CRO, and in Northern Ireland as well, and something I'll talk about in the tax update for Northern Ireland at the end of the show, where we actually have the Institute recommending that the Northern Ireland Executive and Assembly should actually have devolved powers to set its own corporation tax rate. But there's a whole list of other recommendations there. What I'd say to you is, guys, if you haven't seen it already, download a copy. It's a very good read, and it shows, I suppose, all the advocacy and issues put together in one document that the Institute is putting forward to the governments on behalf of members. Conal, that's as much as I'm going to say on tax and on the paper. I'm going to move on next to our technology and practice piece. And as I introduced earlier, I'm delighted here to be joined this morning by both Kieran Phelan and by Maeve Stewart. And Kieran and Maeve have many, many years of experience in practice between them. Both work in very, very progressive practices technology-wise. And just here this morning for the next 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, we're obviously not going to cover all the key technology issues. There's going to be so much more coming from that, and we'll be talking about some upcoming webinars we're going to have in the Institute as well over the coming weeks, but also into 2022 as well, and that we'd like your input on. But first of all, I'd just like to have a chat with Kieran and with Maeve. I suppose really, as we look back and we emerge from the crisis now, for particularly maybe the people who are a little bit slow in moving on technology in practice, it really has proved the importance of technology, its benefits. And I'm just thinking, as I say, of some issues, even internal communications, dealing with clients, different things like that. It really brought it to the fore. And some would ask, how would we have survived 15, 20 years ago without the level of technology we'd have? But I'm sure, guys, you're both working in practice. And I suppose I'll throw this one to you first, Kieran. So your thoughts really, I suppose, on what a saviour technology has been in the last 18 months, or maybe things that could be improved upon as well?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, and thanks for inviting me on today. And I think there's no doubt about it, COVID has changed so much in the world in terms of how we perceive so many things. And for us accountants in practice, the way that you can now run your practice and the way you can serve your clients, I think the perception of what's possible in all of that has hopefully changed as well. Technology and all of that is always, in my view, it's an enabler. It's a tool that if you implement it properly and make the best use of it, it brings you great opportunities. But I always say that there's usually a couple of reasons why change comes about. There's either sort of a want to change, a need to change, or you must change. And obviously a lockdown situation is that must change. So a lot of firms, I have no doubt, across the country were in that must change situation. One of my neighbours actually works for a firm here locally, and he was literally carting home his tower PC and making sure they could access still into the server because they hadn't adopted anything to do with cloud technology at all. But I certainly think that it's now made the need to adopt that type of technology much more front and center of people's minds. So it's really about, I think it's trying to see it that it's created an opportunity, Jeremy, more than anything, for people to have a look at their practices and how they do things and what could actually be the most efficient way of doing things as well.
I would wholeheartedly agree with you there. I think definitely in the last couple of years, we've kind of had, I suppose in the last 5 years, definitely, I know you would have been a pioneer in Xero and in different things, go back 10 years ago, but in the last 5 years, a lot of practices we think, yeah, should I go there? Should I not? But in the last 2 years and with the COVID crisis, if you were not technologically advanced for dealing, if you're still dealing in paper files and sharing and so on in that sort of area and trying to work with your clients remotely, but also with your internal team remotely, it made life so much more difficult. Maeve, you, as I say, as well work, of course, here in Dublin, I suppose, with Beyond, and of course, you're a slightly, I suppose, a practice of about 20 team members, and I know will be quite technologically advanced as well. How have you found, I suppose, the last 18 months with the crisis, and have you any particular, I suppose, thoughts and tips as to how technology has been your saviour?
Oh, hi, Jeremy. Morning. Thank you for having me on as well. Great to talk to everybody. Yeah, well, we were very lucky in Beyond because we had everything already set up. Not that we knew this was coming, of course, but we were already working in the cloud, and a lot of people like myself who are mummies working from home, our real job is actually working from home. So we were all set up to work remotely anyway. So, you know, we were very, very lucky in our firm that it actually really, it didn't change anything. We just kept working at home, and the people who, the full-time staff members who worked in the office, they just migrated home, obviously, but everything we work on is in the cloud. It's paperless office. All our apps are connected up to the central Xero. We work on Xero accounting, so everything ties in, and so we were very lucky. So we were just blessed. We just thanked our blessings that it was already set up. And so from that point of view, it wasn't a struggle. Just, you know, the other aspects of the pandemic, as in having all the rest of your family at home, that was a struggle. But just, you know, the new schemes that came in, the EWSS and the TWSS, so those type of things, just to be able to get those up and running immediately and to explain those to clients, those type of things were new. But we were lucky, we were in a good place, so we didn't struggle too much, actually.
Well, that's great. And actually, you've hit on a key theme here. We all talk about the accountancy packages and the benefits they are for reducing, I suppose, the amount of laborious work we have to do, and also allowing us more time to deal with our clients and winning new clients and so on as well. And actually, Kieran, and this leads us in nicely, and Maeve, I'll be talking to you as well about our technology conference. But Kieran, actually, we're running our first technology event now in 3 weeks' time. Some of you may have already seen it in social media, and I know we sent out an email as well this morning. And me, you, and actually Colin Comerford of Comerford Foley in Waterford, and also Karen Rayburn of the Profitable Firm, we're going to focus on how social media and the use of social media for your practice, and also your online presence, like your webinar and so on, not webinar, your actual online website and so on as well, can actually benefit you for a few things really. First of all, I suppose looking at connecting with winning new clients, and that can be, as I say, particularly during the pandemic, obviously very, very difficult, but also as well looking how you disseminate information. And Kieran, you may I suppose have examples of this during the crisis, how I know you were very good at doing videos and getting out information about support schemes, and it maybe was an alternative to dealing with 20 people on phone calls and so on as well. But Kieran, you may have different thoughts on that webinar, as I say, in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, it's going to hopefully it should be a very good one actually. Karen and Colin are going to bring a great amount of content to that as well. If I think back actually to the start of the pandemic, Jeremy, and actually pre-COVID, it's funny because I would have had a number of clients, and I can think of one in particular where I would have been suggesting we're going to have a Zoom meeting, and the guy used to think, "What are you talking about? What is this thing, Zoom? Like, can you just come to my office and all this kind of stuff?" And about 2 weeks into the pandemic, he contacted me and said, "Right, I now get where you're coming from," because it was now a necessity to be able to do all of these things. So leading into that then, and I suppose the topic we're going to cover in a few weeks' time, and how you can sort of market your practice to prospects and to mainly also to existing clients, but also potential staff that you're trying to attract in. If I think about what we were doing between sort of March and May 2020, most of my time was trying to decipher government announcements very, very quickly, getting phone calls in the middle of it to ask, what does that mean for me? How do we do this? How do we do that? And then setting up a specific Facebook, group and page and all that stuff. I even set up a LinkedIn group, which I think there was like 94, 95 accountants across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And I wanted to make it specific for us to kind of share information. So we had a couple of sessions on that. For me, it was very much like using the technology to, again, be an enabler. Let's everybody get together and see how we can work together as accountants in practice to help all of our clients. But the big thing about it was as well, Jeremy, it's again, I'll go back to the opportunities. On the Facebook group that I set up, I put on like a very basic Excel template just to allow people to download it. I recorded a Loom video of, if you want to look at your cash flow for the next 3 months, given some of the grants you're getting, but given the fact that you're actually closed, what do you need to do? What do you need to look at? Let's look at what your outgoings are, fill these things in, come back to us if you want anything out of that. And we actually were getting incoming inquiries based on just being able to share that information quickly. So some people would say, you're not sure giving away stuff for free. Like, we were in the middle of a worldwide crisis. I thought all bets were off. We just need to try and help everybody we possibly can. And technology was a way to maximize your outreach and maximize the impact of that. So we had people coming to this and saying, listen, I can't even get speaking to my accountant anymore because they're not even answering phones, they're not even responding to emails. They were just absolutely snowed under. And a bit like Maeve was saying, for us, it was very much a case of close the office one Friday and open up again the Monday. Everybody just clicks in from home and logs in and off you go again. So it'll be useful to sort of build on that during our next session as well in a few weeks' time to talk about the social media and marketing aspect of that.
Indeed. And Conal, if you click ahead, for anybody who is interested in this actual webinar, on your slides, there is actually just an overview of it here. It's all about, better interactions, as you said, with your existing clients, perhaps winning new clients, but even winning new actual staff members as well, because a firm that hasn't an online presence for the next generation of workers in their early 20s, you're really not there and won't appeal to them. But listen, more on that on the 29th. It's a free session again, 10 o'clock, and you can actually book at the page below, and you'll see a lot more on the webinars. Before I finish off this piece, and it quite literally is a very high level overview, Maeve, you and I work very closely on the Institute Technology Committee. And obviously, I'm sure most people here in the call today are very familiar with one of the main events we run of the Technology Committee is our actual annual technology conference. Our next one is going to be on the 19th of January 2022. So it's the usual Wednesday morning. It's going to be online again this time. We haven't quite got back to the real world of in-person events. Last January, we had about 1,200 bookings, about 1,000 live attendees. We had, streams for business, streams for young accountants. But we also had our practice stream, and our practice stream was something I think was very, very successful. And I know, Maeve, you have an ask today as we plan the actual next webinar. You'd like to get a few more people involved. I'll leave you tell us more.
Oh, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. Yes, so hopefully a lot of you are already familiar with the Technology Committee's annual flagship event, which is the Technology Conference held in the third Wednesday of January every year. As Jeremy said, traditionally it has been obviously an in-person networking type event, so held in Dublin, Cork and Belfast. But obviously last year we moved to online. So as Jeremy said, we had over 1,000 attendees from all over the world, which was fabulous. So we're able to reach a much wider audience. And we've discussed the logistics of next year's conference, but due to uncertainty in the public health situation, we're going to go with online again. So we'll lose a little bit of the face-to-face networking opportunities, which I know the practitioners really enjoy, and we do ourselves on the committee as well. But we'll obviously in the greater good, we will go with the online version, and we'll be able to reach a lot more people. So last year also going online last year gave us the opportunity to run 3 different streams within the same session, which is logistically it's difficult. Normally in person, especially down in Cork, when you're hiring a hotel and that sort of thing. So we were able to do a lot more and explore different avenues that we hadn't been able to do in face-to-face events. So the practitioner stream, members of business stream, and young professionals. And this year upcoming, we'll definitely be having the practice stream again, and the business stream might go for a public sector stream or financial services as well. We'll see what topics come up. But at the moment, we're pulling the whole conference together. So we'd really like to hear from yourselves as practitioners out there on the ground at the coalface, dealing with the public. So any area of technology that you feel you would like to find out more about, any more information that you would like, any new topics that are coming up that you'd like us to feature at the conference, please send an email into practicematters@charteredaccountants.ie. Is that right?
It's actually practice members, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with it here. And it's actually, if you go to the back of your slide pack, we have our general email address. We'd love to, as Maeve said, to actually get ideas for any topics you'd like covered, be it in the actual technology conference in January or other upcoming technology events as well, that we will have perhaps later into 2022. Maeve, I think you've given a great overview there, as I say, of a very popular event. And also, if you're a speaker and maybe you'd like to get involved in one of our events, please come back to us as well in Practice Members. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to discuss your thoughts more. So please do share with us there. Before we click on to the next thing, I know quite literally 30 seconds, Kieran, you said you have a tip you'd like to share with us there, and quite literally is 30 seconds, and then we're back to Conal and G.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeremy. No, it's just to sort of say, if there's any practices out there who are still on a journey in terms of adopting technology and cloud technology and so on, think about it as well, that the whole paperless office environment has been something on the agenda for probably 20 years. But now you're in a situation where there's so much tech out there that you can literally do it in a flash. Just bear in mind that if you're on that kind of journey as well, make sure you think about, if I'm doing something current in paper, how can I do it online? It really is as simple as starting to change that, and it's really about changing your habits as opposed to actually changing everything in your practice and everything in your life. Changing your habits is really where it starts. So if you think about it along those lines, and I'm always happy to help anybody that needs any help at all.
Well, Kieran, that offer, I'm sure, is greatly appreciated. And as I say, I know you have great insights over the last 10, 15 years in this area. And I look forward to actually our tin in on the 29th of October. And I know future events as well. And I know, Kieran, to thank you, you have spoken at our technology conference in 2020 in Belfast. And I'm sure we'll have you along at other events, and we'll collaborate in different things as well. Listen, guys, it's been great to have those insights in technology. I know you're going to stay on with us until the end of the show. So if we have any other questions, we'll be back at that stage. Conal, I'm going to hand back to you. I know you have a much heralded topic of the update from Dee on her professional accountancy team and what they have been doing in the last while. So back to you, Conal and Dee.
Thanks very much, Dee. It's great to have you on. I think this is the first time we've had you on Practice News, so you're very, very welcome. Dee, I mean, you're titled at the head of professional accounting. Just in terms of it's the dealing with regulators, dealing with accounting standards, dealing with auditing standards. Would that be fair to say that that's all encompassed?
Sure, it would indeed, Conal. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Conal, for having me on. Yeah, professional accountancy team. In encompasses, I suppose, the old rep and tech team, as a lot of people would know it. We now are within the advocacy and voice group within the Institute. So, you know, we look at obviously the core accounting, auditing and insolvency, but, you know, we look at, we engage with external stakeholders, we look at the CRO, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have a very wide reach.
Absolutely, very broad brief. I think yourself and myself are in constant contact in dealing with matters that impact on practitioners, which is core to what you're doing. And if I mention the word core, the very next thing that springs to mind is a CRO and what's happening there. I mean, obviously the deadline, the 25th of November deadline is not here, but it's coming. And there were terrible problems last year. How are things this year?
Well, things were going relatively okay, I would have said. I think the system over the summer maybe got quite stable. In talking to the registrar, you know, things were going fairly smoothly. They have introduced a wait system, and I think this is to ensure that there isn't too much traffic on the website at any time. So that was to allow however many hundred users in. So they were certainly working on that over the summer. And now I know just from hearing from some members this week that that appeared to have got very long wait periods. So I have alerted to the CRO about that. And I know there were a number of issues this week. Again, to members, many thanks for letting me know. I bring all of those up with the registrar. So I think we will keep talking to her. The last time I spoke to her, she wasn't minded to look at giving any extensions. And, you know, she said there were very mixed messages coming from accountants. A lot felt that they just wanted to get back onto the normal timeframes. But, you know, I think we'll keep a real watch on this, because obviously it's the smaller and medium practitioners who may have issues, and particularly if there are issues with the system.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. And I mean, our experience last year was that relatively late in the day there was an extension given. You'd hope this year that the pressures don't build to the extent that happens. I mean, I've obviously had a year now to work on the system. So obviously we're keeping a watching brief, and we're hearing from practitioners, and we're feeding that back. So by all means, do keep in contact with us. I think that's the message.
Yeah, and in fairness to them, I think they have done an awful lot of work on it. I think they are trying new things. I know they brought in artificial intelligence to read the signatures and that. So I think there is a lot of work going on it. But as I say, we will keep very close to this and keep in constant contact with them. Absolutely.
And one sort of fallout from it, of course, is if people file late as we stand, if companies file late, they lose audit exemption if they're small companies, which once again, our position is that is not helpful. It's punishing the wrong person, and so forth and so forth. And we've made that case many times. But from your dealings with them, we're not really
they're not really hearing it. No, I mean, I think we've talked to the registrar about this. We also, in a recent meeting with the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, brought it up also. They are not minded to change it. In their mind, it works. You know, they have seen filings increase by hundreds of % since it came in. We have outlined the issues, and again, particularly on small and medium practitioners. You know, I think there are other sanctions that they could use, and at this stage, I think we are going to make representations on it and just see where we can get. But you know, I mean, as you know, and as practitioners know, to have to do an audit for 2 years is really onerous. There is no such thing as a simple audit anymore. Yeah. So I just think it's really punitive.
Absolutely. Look, you're going to be working there, and no doubt when we're talking again, you'll be able to give us feedback on that. It's say from what I've seen and heard, there's a fair degree of opposition in official circles to any movement on this one, even now.
Sure. I would just say on that, if anybody has any issues with the CRO, if they encounter any, I would encourage you to email them. Chris is going to put the email in the chat function, but you know, the more that you can alert them to issues, the more they can get them fixed quickly. So I would really encourage that.
Absolutely. So yes, please do that. The other issue here on our list of things we're chatting about what's going to be important coming forward very, very soon now is a deadline for SIRBOT, the RBO for trusts. So who's caught by this, Dave? Okay,
so this is our third central register, I guess. So we had the company one back in November 2019. Last that was by the RBO, by the register sits with the CRO. Second one was the central bank register, which is for ICAVs, unit trusts and credit unions. So this is the beneficial ownership of trusts, and this captures essentially any express trusts, which is a trust created in express terms rather than one inferred by law. So I guess it is a trust established by deed, and all trusts are covered if they are not an excluded arrangement. So what kind of things are excluded arrangements? Well, approved occupational pension schemes, approved retirement funds, approved profit sharing schemes, and family trusts and bare trusts for minors are actually included in it. The Central Register have a very comprehensive Q&A section on the Revenue website. They are continually adding Q&As to it, and I would encourage anybody that thinks they have to register a trust under this to look at that. So our date for any trust created before the 23rd of April, the last registration date is 23rd of October, and for any trust created after that, it's to register within 6 months.
Absolutely. And the register itself sits in Ross, which
the register itself sits in Ross, yes.
And given that it's in the high season of tax, it's advisable to not delay at the moment.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I would encourage, given the issues that there frequently are with Ross in October, November, I would encourage anybody to try and file early. And again, if you do have any queries, they are working through them either from a systems point of view, because this is a new system within Revenue, or if you have any queries on trust, they have a very active group, and again, the emails for those or how to get into them from your ROS account are included in the Q&A.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think you told me this. You had a few items you wanted just to alert people of now some news items you wanted to just run through people.
Thank you, Conor. That would be great. So just, I suppose, just to give you a flavour of some of the other matters that we're looking at in professional accountancy. I know many of you use the AML technical release from 2019. Now, as you know, there have been a number of legislative updates on this, so we are in the process of updating that with a working group at the moment. We've been at it for the last 3 months, probably. It's quite a meaty one to update, but we will get that out in this quarter. We're trying to get it out as quickly as we can to you. Alongside that, we are creating a technical hub page on the website, and that will be within the technical hub on the Institute. And again, that's trying to consolidate, I suppose, all of the information required for AML. One thing I would just mention on AML is just for for practitioners to, if you haven't done so already, to actually register on Go AML. And we had a call with the FIU earlier this week, because we have a group with them called the Joint Practices Group, where we just share information. But they were saying they had 182 firms registered this time last year. That has now increased to 345. So thank you to all who have registered. And if you haven't registered, I would encourage you to do so. And again, there is quite a bit of that on our website.
Everyone should register either north or south with your Go AML or with the equivalent police website in Northern Ireland. You need to be on there. You need to be able to report when the time comes that you have to report.
Absolutely. And this hub, which will be up and running soon, that will have all the information for both north and south.
Absolutely.
So we're also we are responding to an IAASB exposure draft on the audit of less complex entities. I think this will probably interest a lot of the people on this call. So we have a working group on that. That's due back in 31 January 2022. And I suppose, as you know, as the operating environment becomes more complex, and that in terms of using the ISAs, maybe there is a better way. Some of the local countries have adopted their own LCEs, but there was felt that this really led to inconsistencies. So I think the IASB felt that it was in the public interest to have a global standard for it. Again, it is a very meaty document. We do have some stuff on our technical hub on it, and we will continue to show that and improve on it. Some of the other stuff we have been doing is just looking at reporting to third parties and some of the issues which come up on that. So as we know, accountants hate the word certify, and yet there are in particular a number of the public bodies who seem to continue to use it. And so we have been working with them just to try and create a report that they would be happy with, and also that the accountant would be happy to sign off with. And two of the recent ones of these we've done were some of the COVID payments for Board Fáilte, and also the nursing home payments for the NTPF. So again, if there are any issues like this that you're aware of, please let me know, and we will certainly see what we can do to help.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a constant area. I often get phone calls about this. Somebody has a good client and they're trying to get onto a list where they can where they can get tenders or whatever in. And in order for that, they need this letter in the format which basically says something along the lines of we certify or we declare. I think that they love to put onto it is that the entity can pay, or the person can pay their debts as they fall due, or something to that effect, or are financially stable, or some other woolly word which as an accountant you're really keen not to sign. Now personally, the advice I give to people is, look, just put together, I mean, there's loads of documentation out there. There's TRO1, the Technical Restatement of 2001. There's even M45, the grant claim one, which gives you sort of a wording that you can adapt to say, this is what I know. I know this and this and this. That's what I can say. My suggestion usually is just give that in to the grant giver, to the local authority or whoever, and usually that's fine. I mean, you know, they discuss. I mean, really, what do they want? They want a letter from an accountant saying that I'm here. I think that very often that seems to be the actual content or detail is not as important to them. So that often works. Sometimes, of course, the grant giver, the local authority digs their heels and says, "No, we want it our way." And at that point, we need the to and fro process. That you are so, you know, as you love so much. And try to. I mean, it's a never-ending process because there's always somebody else coming up with dreaming up some certificate that they want accountants to sign. So it's a tricky area. That's fine. The other area that we said we might mention is sustainability reporting and so forth, and the extent that impacts on small to medium-sized companies. I suppose there's no reporting structure as such.
Not yet. No, I mean, I think in terms of our work, even for the last 12 months, I suppose we've been feeding into consultation. So you have at the IFRS now looking at the ISSB, which is the Sustainability Standards Board. So I think we will see a roadmap for that coming out. And I understand from stuff I heard during the week that they are talking about bringing out their first standard, which will be on climate, in the middle of 2022, which would be amazingly fast. But as everybody says, they consider this so important that they're working at lightning speed. Meanwhile, the EU got a little impatient in the last year looking at what had happened on the international front. So they are proposing to bring out the EU CSRD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So that will widen the net for EU. It will create an EU standard. It's much wider than what's there for the NFRE, the non-financial reporting directive. So I think we're very much watching that to see what will be on it. In terms of the small to medium-sized entities, there's not a lot yet, but it is something that we are looking at, and we are collating a lot of content on it. There are a number of reasons. One, I think, because the whole climate issue is just so prevalent at the moment that people actually want to look at it and see, well, I would like to report something on it. Smaller entities are also, I think, being asked more and more for sustainability information because they're part of a supply chain of a listed company, which needs to look at the ESG credentials going down their supply chain. And likewise on green finance, if small and medium entities are going for finance at the moment, there are frequently questions asked as to, what your ESG credentials are. So I think for small and medium sized entities, it's coming, and we will do whatever we can and put out information to try and help entities with that, and then to try and just educate accountants to be able to answer questions. I think from a personal point of view that we're all in educating mode on this subject at the moment. It's a really huge subject. I know our team, we have gone down lots of rabbit holes looking at matters. So we will try and just summarize a lot of that information. Again, there will be we do have an excellent sustainability hub on the Institute website. We are about to add to that with a particular sustainability reporting chapter on it, that will have links to a lot of the information which is out
absolutely there. That's very interesting, and I think it's something we're going to be talking more about going forward. Somebody was asking there, somebody put a question in, why should I become an expert in ESG? I mean, expert is probably fairly far along the spectrum. Yeah. I mean, we all need a degree of knowledge about this. So I think that's what we're trying to pitch for. Dee, that was very, very helpful. You have a very broad brief, and I think those are areas which are absolutely fundamental to accountants' understanding and accountants' practices. So thank you very much for coming on, and you're more than welcome to come back again, and we'll follow up on some of those points that you're raising. I know there's been a few queries, and especially on CRO, so perhaps if you like, you can answer them via the Q&A, or else we can stay on towards the end if you're around. I don't know if you
okay, great. That's lovely. Thank you.
Please. Much appreciated. Look at. Thank you. Now we are going to talk about going to talk about getting and keeping staff, which I think, in fairness, is a hot topic for most accountancy practices. It is hard. It has always been hard to get good staff, but has it got even harder? So I'm delighted to have Karen Lanigan, our Head of Member Experience, and Dave Reardon, our Institute Recruitment Specialist, on to help me formulate our thoughts of this. Karen, this comes up a lot when I'm talking to practitioners. I mean, it seems to me it is almost, dare I say, harder to get good staff than to get good clients these days. Is that what you're hearing out there from members generally and practitioners in particular?
It certainly is, Conal, and like Dave and myself would have conversations, I would say, on a daily basis with our members in practice, all of whom are experiencing the same challenge in terms of recruitment. And you might say, well, look, how has this come about? And I suppose the simple fact is that, you know, supply at certain levels in the market is outstripping demand. And I think what happened during the early stages of the pandemic was that obviously, naturally, everybody was very fearful, didn't know what was around the corner. So it was a case of just batten down the hatches, put, you know, plans on hold, and not recruit for the time being. But then as well, what happened was that obviously, as you'll all know, clients were looking for more support with, you know, I suppose bringing their businesses and their organizations through the challenges of the pandemic. So very quickly we got to a stage where practices needed more resources and more staff on board to do that, and that has heightened even more so over the last I suppose 6 to 12 months, 6 months in particular, where we have seen, as we've all, I suppose, thankfully seen, the economy has rebounded more quickly than I suppose we would have had anticipated. So that I suppose there's that crunch or that pinch point is how Dave and I would describe it. You know, where things have come together, where there is that demand. And I suppose the demand is very much at that recently qualified level that, you know, for the vast majority of roles that we're seeing coming up, that is where the key demand is. And as I said, it is a question of supply and demand at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, you're on the ground every day talking to our members, talking to people seeking roles, talking to people with roles seeking people. If you were to give some advice to people, what can you do to differentiate yourself?
Certainly, Conal, yeah, there's a lot of different suggestions around that. And just to echo what Karen was saying, I suppose, like the issues we're seeing and the challenges in terms of recruitment are across SMP and small and medium-sized practices as well as large. So it's felt across the board, no matter how big the practice is. We've also seen, I suppose, it's worth looking back over the last 18 months, which has been a really unusual one in the recruitment space generally. Like we've seen a market which has been split in two almost. You know, if we were to look at industry just separately, you've got tech, pharma, construction, healthcare companies and organizations booming. And then on the flip side, you've got hospitality, leisure, and everything on that other half of the market that have been struggling. And we've never really seen that kind of market before. That in itself has an impact on practices large and small, you know, when they're dealing with their client base. But look, it's a rising tide economically, which is really good. We're, as Karen said, we're at a bit of a chicane there at the moment, just trying to catch the right people to join practices. So it's only temporary. That's the one thing I would say. And I do feel that speaking to practitioners at the moment. So stick with it. There's a seasonality to the market as well. You know, during the summer, things can be a little bit quiet on the candidate front. Now into September, it's picked up and there's a bit more energy in the market. But as you say, there are a few things that practitioners can do to help themselves in this space. Just a high-level helicopter view of things, like I think May was touching on it there, our website and online presence. And making sure your website is really reflective of a high caliber practice. You've got, like myself and Karen would have been speaking about things like job specs. I do speak to practitioners every day about the requirements for their team. I come from a mid-tier practice. I've been through it. I know exactly what it means to look for an auditor or someone who can do accounts prep and auditing. I don't even need a job spec, but sometimes a world-class job spec coming from a practitioner can make all the difference in terms of advertising and getting a message out there about what you're really looking at with a prospective practice. So sometimes doing a really good job spec can be advantageous. Having a presence on LinkedIn as a practice can also be an advantage for newly qualified ACAs to follow your practice. It's an opportunity for you to get your brand on there, your values, everything about the practice, and what's positive about the firm. So getting representation as a company on LinkedIn is certainly a good point as well. And we'll probably come back to that company brand thing when we're chatting to Karen. As a differentiator and in the market. And one other thing I thought of there, like practices are interviewing. Zoom is the order of the day at the moment, or online interviewing. I think that in-person interviews are coming back now. And I think the practices that are managing to do that have a little bit of an advantage. They're eyeballing the candidate. They're getting a chance for the candidate to see the premises, get a feel for the culture, the atmosphere, and what the practice has to offer. So I think that can be an advantage at the moment.
That's very interesting, Dave. That word brand, and I hope we haven't lost you there, Dave. That word brand came up when we were talking with this beforehand. Karen, what do you think of the word? What does that mean to you in terms of branding your practice in order to make yourself attractive or genuinely attractive to staff, both to stay and to come to you?
Absolutely, and it's really important. It's one of the kind of, I suppose, the important factors to consider when you're looking to both hire and retain staff. And when we talk about brand, like when we talk about personal brand, what we often say is it's what people say about you when you've left the room or you're not in the room. So really what you need to be thinking about is like, what are your past employees saying about you? What are your current employees saying about you? And what impression are you making on prospective candidates or prospective employees as well? So it's everything from what Dave mentioned there. It's the website, it's the job spec, it's about how you show up for an interview, how you conduct the interview, how well prepared you are for it. And I'm going to throw out a suggestion there now, which might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but one of the best things you can do is actually showcase the talent within your firm, because there can often be a reticence to do that because there's a fear that, look, if I showcase my best talent, they're going to be poached. But actually your current staff are your best ambassadors. And if you can show the quality of the people that you have working within your firm, that makes it more attractive for others to come and join and work with experts within their field. Particularly if you're at an earlier stage in your career, you're going to want to work with the best in the field, people who can act as your mentors, who can, I suppose, help you to develop and progress your career. The other thing you're doing is actually showing to prospective employees that there is a career path here, that there is room for them to progress and to move. So my advice is always, like, particularly when it comes to interviews, put your best people on the panel, so that, if you have candidates coming in for interview, that they can't but be impressed by the people who they're interviewing with, and they'll want to come and work with you because of the opportunity to work with, as I said, some of the best people.
Absolutely.
In the profession. So brand is really, really important. Yeah, sorry, Conal.
And how good are practices generally at this, Karen?
Honestly, not particularly good, and I think there's definitely scope for some certainly to improve in this space. And even things Dave mentioned, the job spec, even putting some extra thought into the job spec. Like, we got a job spec through a week or two ago, and actually it was really well put together. And what made it different was that it gave a sense of what the role was really about. It also highlighted the fact that the exact experience that the candidates stand to obtain in the role. It demonstrated that there was diversity in the role, because not only were they working in audit, they also got experience on the corporate finance side. They also got experience maybe in M&As. And so it was actually just outlining the I suppose the unique selling points of that particular role, the breadth of the role. They also mentioned things like the social club and social activities within the organization, their focus on well-being and health, which is really important for younger members. And they also brought in the sustainability angle that we mentioned earlier too, that this is on the agenda for them. So it's really just, I suppose, using that opportunity to demonstrate that, look, your firm is aware of the key things that candidates in the current market are looking for.
Absolutely. And when I talked, if I throw a question to both of you, if you have, say, a 25-year-old looking at firms, what differentiates one from the other in that sense? Those some key items that they come back to you and say to you, that differentiated them for me.
I might just on that, Conal, because that's a really good point. I actually jotted down a couple of points around why does a member choose a career in practice, and why do they decide they want to do the next couple of years within practice. I was trying to brainstorm this. Like, for me, the key elements that they're looking for is that they want a variety of clients and exposure to a cross section of lots of different sectors, which rounds them out as a chartered accountant. You know, and I think it's highly recognizable that, like, practice does make for better chartered accountants in terms of rounding out and exposure. And I think newly qualified members do recognize that. It also adds to their expertise. It allows them to specialize, get into forensic accounting or indirect tax, etc. So, like, there's an opportunity within practice to do that where they can't get anywhere else. Technical saw sharpening is a key feature of staying within practice and growing your career within practice as well. These are all elements that can be incorporated into a job spec or when you're talking to them at interview. The social aspect can't be overlooked. Like, I remember from my own time in practice, you know, where a lot of members of the same age at the same stage of their career path, it's very collegiate, it's very social. Hopefully all that's coming back now in the year ahead. Many would have partnership ambitions, like, as well, that they're harboring, and they want rapid promotion, and they might even want to set up their own practice in years ahead. So that those years within a firm are very important. So those are just some of the things that occurred to me about why someone stays in practice, because we all know that so many newly qualified ACAs move out into industry and so on, the attractiveness of industry and everything that goes with that.
Can I just add to that, Dave and Conal, if you don't mind? Like, I think the important thing here as well is, I would totally agree with everything that Dave has said there, but also as well, just to think in terms of the overall benefits package that you're offering. And by this, I don't mean necessarily, you know, kind of money or salary, you know, but things like, you know, looking at, you know, working arrangements, you know, particularly now that we're in that, you know, I suppose flexible working / hybrid working arrangements. I think the firms and practices that embrace that and provide that as a benefit will definitely be able to differentiate themselves in the market. You know, as Dave said, the social piece is really important. So even setting up a social club, investing in that, and having, you know, kind of regular social events can be really, really important. You know, at one practice I spoke to recently, you know, they bring in fruit once a week for the team, or once a month they might have a few drinks on a Friday in the office or whatever. So it's things like that. It doesn't have to cost big money, but it's just, you know, showing that you care about the staff, that you're investing in them, and you're creating that positive work environment.
Absolutely, yes. All of those are going to be differentiators. So these are things, you know, in a competitive market, you can differentiate yourself. And we're running out of time now, but we had a long conversation about this before. And one thing that came up also was levers. Look after your levers. They're out there. They're talking about your firm. They were there. You want them to be saying good things about you. So just think about that one. Your website, I look at scores and scores of practitioners' websites. They're all about getting clients. Be precise. That's what their websites are there for. Think about your website once again in terms of getting staff. Please do that. And then all of that, the human side. This is how, I mean, bear in mind, you know, the human side, as Dave and Karen were saying, that is a huge part of how you can differentiate yourself from another practice where people might feel that the work-life balance wasn't as good. So this is something you can offer, so do offer. So I mean, yeah, absolutely. Those are some really great points. The whole branding side, the message, the idea of what do people say about you when they leave the room. It's so important, and the idea of bringing your best people to the interviews. There's just so many things there you can think about, and the job spec, as you were talking about, Karen, to really get a world-class job spec, so when people see it, this talks to them. Yeah, absolutely. So it's there's so many things there that people can be thinking about. This is the doing this improperly or badly is one of the key restrictors to growth for practices. So if you do it well, obviously the opposite applies. So that is really helpful. Thank you very, very much. I know we're over time already. Do either of you have any final point to make to practitioners looking to keep staff?
Yeah, the other thing I would just say is to keep your options open, because one of the, I suppose, the challenges at the moment is that the vast majority of practices are all looking to recruit at the same level. So that's kind of that early stage chartered accountant. But if you were to broaden out your I suppose talent pool choices, even to look at more senior candidates on a part-time basis, even looking at outsourced type arrangements. I spoke to a firm yesterday who just recruited a more experienced chartered accountant to come in and work with them on a consultancy basis. So as their I suppose workload increases, they have somebody there, as suppose a release valve that they can go to. So I would say, just think outside of the box, and look at new talent pools. The returners, market is really, another option to look at, where you have people who've maybe taken a career break and are looking back into the market now as well. So keep your options open is what I would say.
That's super. Thank you very much, guys. Dave, any final word?
Just at the other end of the spectrum, grow your own trainees as well. Look at taking on an extra trainee or even a finalist. I mean, we've just had the FAEs results come out. Some didn't get through; they're out of contract. They want to keep going with practice. There's a target-rich environment.
Absolutely, good. All very good points, and the training one, not least of them. Right, thank you very, very much. I think that's loads and loads of very good pointers, loads of food for thought for our members. Hopefully there's something there for everybody. Guys, I'm going to hand you back to Jeremy now, just to try and finish out very, very quickly. Jeremy, we're way over time now, but we'll
yeah, not to worry, Conal. As I say to you, no, I think two great sessions there, yourself and Dee, and also Karen and Dave. A lot of information there. And I know that Nora and Dee have been very busy as well. I want to thank them behind the scenes, answering questions there on the Q&A. So thank you very much for that. Listen, guys, just quickly looking ahead, just a couple of quick UK tax updates here. Obviously, our UK tax specialist, Leontia, is contactable at any time if you have any queries. But a couple of things Leontia just like to highlight to us. They've had a very busy summer, and I highlighted some of these things in our last practice news with relation to submissions to various bodies like the OTS on their structures, with relation to other requirements as well, even with around the changing of the tax year as well from April. One that is very timely this week is in relation to the devolved corporation tax rate for Northern Ireland survey. I think 2/3 of members were surveyed in recent weeks in Northern Ireland, and Ulster came back and said they would actually see that the Northern Ireland Assembly executive should have powers in this area, and powers potentially to decrease the corporation tax as a selling point for industry in Northern Ireland. Bearing that in mind, and many more things as well, and also the next financial year documents, our President Paul Henry, and I think Nora was with him, and Crona and a number of other institute members would have met with the Fiscal Commission for Northern Ireland and highlighted these points. We've had a lot of media coverage in Northern Ireland and also in the Republic, and there will be a lot of further updates coming as well in e-news actually this afternoon, and I'm sure in tax news as well on Monday, so keep your eyes peeled on that. And Leontia has asked me, with the HMRC agent dedicated line restored just back in June after the worst of the COVID crisis, it promises a lot with relation to speedier service and improved quality of service. I'm not sure it's still quite back up to full speed, but Leoncha has asked us that if any member has particular issues or feedback, to come back to her directly on that. There's lots more every week in our tax newsletters, in our scheme updates. I'm sure most of you get them there, but if you don't get the tax newsletter, particularly on a Monday, go into your communications preferences in my accounts section of the website and amend and change that. And indeed, the same goes for your practice news and your practice related updates. Cornel, if you can click ahead again. Cornel, you're on mute. You are clicking ahead. Yeah, this is just a very quick one here. Some upcoming webinars. I've mentioned a few of these already, Cornel. Listen, we have a whole myriad of practice-related webinars coming up. This is a busy time of year. I'm sure many of you have tuned into our webinars in September. We continue a pace, pretty much one a week for the next 2 months. I mentioned auditing. If you want to learn a little bit more, if it's your area, very popular webinar next Thursday morning. We're getting great numbers coming along to it so far. Please join us. You can learn more at the link there. Also, I mentioned, of course, our actual Growing Your Practice online session. Myself and Kieran and Maeve had a good chat on that. We're also, for Northern Ireland members, we have a charities course. We had our Republic of Ireland one in September, charities on the 21st of October, anti-money laundering, and there's a whole list of other courses as well, including our next practice news, which we hope you'll all tune in and join us. It'll be on the 3rd of December. So not that long away, 6-7 weeks away now. So it promises to be very, very good. All I'm going to say, Conal, from my point of view, I'm not sure if anybody else, maybe if there's Nora or Dee or somebody wants to add in any final comments, or even Kieran and Maeve as well. I know we're very much over time, so if somebody wants to put up their hand and make a comment, but I just want to do finally is to thank all our guests this morning for joining us. So to thank Kieran and Maeve, to thank Dee, to thank Nora, to thank Karen and Dave. A great session, so much for everyone here today. Also to thank our CPD team in the background, of course, Chris, Nicole, Linda, my own colleague Bernie as well, for all the emails, communications, and Jenny as well. And Conal, yourself as well. I know you've been struggling a bit with a bit croaky, but you're hopefully going to get the rest of yourself, as I say now. And guys, if you do want to contact us, and thank you this morning as well for tuning in to Practice News. If there's anything, and we'd love your feedback on technology events, so please do contact us and Practice members. But if it's anything practice related, do contact us. Anything tax related, contact Nora or Leoncha, depending on your jurisdiction. And indeed, contact Dave as well on the recruitment side, and Karen and Dee as well there if it's CRO related. So you've a myriad of choices there. I know some of these topics are just going to keep on giving, but it's good to have the update anyway. Conal, I'm going to leave you with the final word.
Absolutely. Well, I can see that our panelists have been very, very busy answering all of the questions there that have come up. So I'm not sure we need to extend as previously. Thank you very much. I can see each and every one of you has been answering those questions as it becomes. It's great to have an interactive session like that where people can throw out a question and get a direct answer from our team here. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for doing that. Jeremy, thanks to yourself as always for bringing the whole thing together, which you certainly do really well. So thank you for that, and to all our participants and members for coming along.
Somebody did ask, and it's not surprising it being such a busy show, will it be on playback? Will there be a recording? There will indeed. You'll get the link actually sent to you in the follow-up email, and it'll be on YouTube. All our recordings of our webinars, our practice news webinars, are on YouTube, and they're also actually on our practice news webpage on the practice consulting part of the website. So not alone this one, but the previous ones, and it'll be going live definitely by early next week, and I'll send you on details. Obviously connect in with us as well as social media is the team. I try to connect in with as many as possible on LinkedIn, so we'll be keeping updates and all that as well. And please do join up with us if you're already not a connection on LinkedIn, and we'll get you out up-to-date updates, particularly around this show and so on, as we go through the coming weeks. So thank you, guys.
All right, thanks everyone. Look after yourselves. Cheers.